Welcome. We are at an emergency session of a board meeting to discuss the Metro housing initiatives.
Sorry, the doors are locked downstairs. Can you let someone know, please? I'm sorry, Chair. The building doors are locked. We're going to unlock them now.
Oh, the doors are locked. Do we need to wait for people to come up?
There we go. Okay, we're good.
We're good. Okay, Gary, I'm going to have you kick this off.
Yes, thank you, Chair Smith. So, Commissioners, today we are here at a policy session to discuss the Metro Supportive Housing Services Program and funding for that program, and different information that has come out very recently about when that funding will be received at the 3 counties in the Portland metro area. We have multiple staff here to give you all the information you would ever hope for on the background of this program, the funding streams, the most recent information we have. We have from Health, Housing, and Human Services, Rod Cook; from the Housing Authority, Jill Smith; County Counsel Stephen Madcore; Finance Director Elizabeth Comfort. They all have a piece of this. They will all share what they can. You are now sitting as the Housing Authority Board of Clackamas County, by the way. Housing Commissioner Ann Leenstra will be joining you any moment now on Zoom. There's a lot of background. You have a memo that I did send you as part of this packet and a memo prior for Metro. There's just a lot to go over. So I'd like to ask if staff, as briefly as possible, give a quick update and background, and then commissioners will ask questions. So how about, who would like to start? Rod? Jill? Go ahead, Jill, please.
Okay. I've had the opportunity to be at the tables with Commissioner Fisher, actually, while this tax was being planned and when it was referred to Metro, because they were an entity that could take it to the public for a vote. So I've been part of the planning for what this work should be and would look like for a long time. And once it passed in the region, we were directed to create a plan that would be able to be implemented by July 1st of 2021. And we've actually received quite a bit of pressure to do so. We had our plan approved by the Regional Oversight Committee, which has 4 Clackamas County appointees, which our board appointed. This morning, it was approved by them, and it'll be referred to Metro Council for final approval in June. Our plan contains required elements, including a budget and numbers of people to be served. Multnomah County presented their plan for approval, and it was pushed back and denied because it didn't have those things. And I just say that because it was based on us receiving $24.2 million and the number of people we could serve over a full year with that amount of money. And, these requirements were based upon that information being given to us. We have not been told until May 12th in a meeting, when it just happened to come up from their council, the amount of money that they had collected as of that day, that they anticipated 3/4 of the funding would come in the final quarter of the year, this time next year, basically. And so all 3 counties were in the room. All 3 counties were aghast, shocked. Multnomah and Washington County have already taken out loans from their council to support their staffing levels. And we all had no idea, because, we've invested a lot in getting to this point. So we are all in the same situation. Both of my peers in those counties will be going before their board asking for help solving for this. So I just want you to know that we have just followed directions, assuming the IGA and the plan had to be done to make sure Clackamas County was eligible to receive our share of this funding.
Okay. Any other staff want to make any comments? Gary?
Elizabeth, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm Elizabeth Comfort, Finance Director with the county. I just want to share a couple of things on the taxes, and I was grateful for Commissioner Fisher to bring up, the income or the business tax. I did some research just prior to this on the 2 different taxes that are being collected for these dollars. One is a personal income tax. It's 1% over the income of more of $125,000 per individual, or 1% over $200,000 per couple. And they are working, Metro and the city of Portland, who's doing the collection, they are working with payroll companies to do that through these individuals or couples' payroll. And that actually starts January 1st of 2022. Any collection from that personal income tax up to then is voluntary if some of the organizations, businesses get those processes and systems set up in advance. The second tax is a 1% tax on business profits over $5 million. It's called a gross receipt tax. So the company that Metro hired is Eco Northwest to do these estimates of what they think the collections are going to be. Metro, with the support of Eco Northwest, said that the first year in total, in a total fiscal year, the collection would be $32 million, not out of the gate in July, but over the course of the whole fiscal year, with the bulk of the dollars from these taxes coming in April of '22, because of businesses estimate their taxes on a quarterly basis, and they do the reconciliations, for the taxes in the following April. And but they did recommend for the counties to estimate lower because of the volatility and the flexibility of the taxes, because this is the first year of actually collecting. So that is why we have in our budget 24.2 million, is because it's recommended to be more conservative on those first year estimates, absolutely. It will take a few years for the revenue to stabilize as the businesses, have these payroll systems in, and the taxes are collected. It can be, there's a lot of variables. I don't know what they all are, but in the taxing world, so it will take 2 to 3 years for the revenue to be stable. And as I mentioned earlier in another meeting, that they will need to do some audits with the different businesses and taxes to ensure that the taxes are appropriately being collected.
Elizabeth, how much money has been collected so far?
So they've only collected, and Metro is receiving monthly reports. So they have received April's report of the taxes collected, and that is $500,000. They will not have May's until next month. So I asked again today, do we know what May's collection is? No, they won't receive that until next month. And then
how long, so when did this pass, and how long have they been trying to collect taxes on this?
the business taxes, the 1% tax on business profits over 5 million started January 1st of '21.
Okay. And then the next one won't start until next year.
The personal income tax will start January 1 of '22.
So they've collected 500,000, but we don't know what the disbursement's going to be.
Well, out of the first month, they will, Portland, who is acting as our tax collection entity, they will take $200,000 as a reserve. And that's a stabilization reserve. It's just a one-time. So over the course of the 10 years, should, projections come in less, or there was a change, that they could work to make the counties whole using that reserve. And then the remainder would be split by the 3%. So just using that first month, it would be $300,000 would be dispersed, and Clackamas County's portion would be approximately $57,500.
57.
And a half. But that's just the first month because of that $200,000, correct.
And when can we expect the 57,000?
So it would be, our first distribution would also include May's, and the way it's written right now, the agreement is July 1st, or when the IGA is signed, whichever comes first. And we're actively working on the IGA as we speak. Every week, the finance folks are gathering to go through particulars, working with council. So we look to have the IGA, I think it's a tentative date, June 24th, and I'm throwing that out there in a month.
Well, I tell you, let's not talk about the IGA right at the moment, because we're really getting out in front of ourselves. County Council has looked over the IGA, and I think it's problematic as well. I want to talk about this tax And I know, Paul, you have your hand up. I have an entire page full of notes, questions that need to be answered today, and I'm not sure that we can get to those answers. So, in the LIP, is it expected that this county will incur costs as we go forward in anticipation of revenue that may or may not come in?
No.
How can you say that when you hired 4 people already?
We did that with authorization from the county administrator. I submitted a staffing plan, knowing that funding would be coming in, well, having been told funding would be coming in July.
Okay,
But
all right.
that's not discussed in the LIP.
Okay, so, but those positions are for housing and this new metro money. I understand there's money for that, but my point is, I don't know how this county can continue on this track of spending money we don't have and hoping that Metro is going to collect money from taxpayers who are out of work because of COVID. I have said that time and time again. I'm trying to get people to think about this from this point of view. I know Metro has said this and this and this and this, but the reality of the situation, it is not happening. And we are at risk. Our general fund or other funds or whatever funds are at risk. And that's why I did not want to approve that budget today. Timing, obviously, is a huge issue. Timing is a huge issue. I understand that we need to take advantage of opportunities, but we don't know what the timing is. Now, the auditor from Metro is an independently elected official. They started an audit on this process in June of 2020. That audit will be completed by the end of this month, and we should have results. I don't know what the audit is going to say. I don't know if it's going to answer the questions that I'm asking here today. I have no idea. But I will say this, people. Metro owes us and the tri-counties an explanation on when they think the money is going to come in. And I don't see how Metro can expect any of the counties to incur expenses for revenue that may not be realized. And I have such heartburn over that. And what if the economy dives? What if the economy is worse today? And one of the reasons why the economy is so good, so did you see the revenue report at the state legislature? It's up $1 billion. And do you know why? Does anybody in the room know why? Well, read the fine print. Because of the federal payments of unemployment. And people were paid income taxes on their federal payments. That's why it has gone up. And when those federal payments go away, as I suspect it will, if we do not have business recovery, if we're continuing businesses not opening, not being able to produce goods and services, we could be in a hard time. I have been personally through so many recessions in my lifetime. And I can point to every single one where government charged. Government charge from some program of the government. And we are finally to a point at Clackamas County where our budget is right-sized from all the hard work that you all have done in this room. And I just do not want to put it in peril again. Now, I'm going to be quiet because I know my other commissioners want to talk. Paul, you're up.
Thank you. So I learned yesterday, I didn't know this till yesterday, but I learned yesterday and heard on the news, and even on the way in this morning on the news, that this measure, the supportive housing measures,
Hey, Paul, can you talk into the microphone more? Thank you.
Yeah, this housing measure is in court, basically, for a judge to decide what, on the formula or something that, as stated in the news report, will have a outcome that could change the amount of money that's actually collected. So that means we really don't know, if I'm surmising here from what I heard in the deal, we really don't know how much money. We don't know it's going to be 32 or probably less, perhaps, possibly less. But to what degree, I don't know. So that's an uncertain piece of this. On April 13th, when we approved the LIP, I made some points about the timing between the IGA and the work plan. So, you know, Tootie, you raised a question to Jill. Jill's response was, no, it's not going to make it we can spend. But the point I was trying to make on April 13th, without the work plan and the clear guidance, we might spending money that's not even eligible to be paid by until it's clear in the IGA or the work plan what we can actually spend the supportive housing services dollars on. So the LIP was very vague. I made that point on April 13th. And I was told that the IGA and the work plan would give that specificity to what's eligible. So I would say, Jill, maybe perhaps that we can't really answer the question on spending dollars until we actually know for certain. I mean, some things are clear, some basic things are clear, like rent assistance and so forth, I get that. But I'm not sure that what's all eligible until we have a signed IGA that says this is what we can do, or the work plan in conjunction. So we don't know how much, we don't know what we can spend it on. Those are two things I can say are uncertain from what I've learned so far. And we don't know, so we don't know how much, we don't know when, and we don't know what we can spend it on. So those are three uncertainties. I guess we could put some money in the budget and say, you know, we'll see revenue by, you know, June 30th of 2022, of perhaps 20 million maybe, or 24 million, whatever the number is. But I don't see how we can actually spend it. So I can see there's revenue in, I can't see the expenditures, practically speaking. Their own charts don't say that they can get the money to us that fast. I guess if there's a little bit of good news out of this, my opinion is this gives us time to work on the work plan. This gives us time to work on the IGA to identify that. And then we can just ramp into this. I don't see this as bridge because we're starting with zero and we're going to get to somewhere and we need to ramp into that. And until we have all those details, I think it's answered by the court, answered by what that amount's going to be, and the work plan and the IGA. When we have all of that, I think we can actually work towards, you know, ramping into this, you know, as needed, and hopefully soon. Hopefully by July or August, we can have that work plan and the IGA completed. The deadline for the IGA is when? Is there a deadline for the IGA? For the IGA?
There's not a deadline, but the Metro has penciled it in to go to Metro Council by the end of June, so that money could flow July 1st. That's what they told us in our last meeting.
Right. Yeah, and you know, again, obviously by the budget you presented this morning and the response I got to answer my question, that budget was prepared 6 weeks ago with the information that we would have X amount of money. So I'm not pointing the finger at anyone here. I'm just trying to deal with what we do know and what we don't know and approaching this from a practical standpoint. So I just say that we wait for all this and just ramp into it, plug in the 24 million in the budget, but not as expended, but as revenue. That's what I have.
Elizabeth, did you want to make a comment?
Oh, I was just, the pass-through dollars, what the lawsuit's about, is either using the Metro's home rule, or if the business is going to be taxed, and then the individual, the pass-through, then they won't have to, they can discount their taxes by what they received at the pass-through because the business is already paid, or use the state ruling where the business passes the 100% of the money through, and then the individual has to pay the taxes. That's the, so I'm not sure how that would impact maybe timing on receiving the revenue, but it should be I don't know how that would impact the revenue, but that's the crux of the lawsuit.
Yeah. Mr. Madcore, is it possible you can have your legal staff look into that to find out the details about what's in court, and so we can get some more certainty?
Are you wondering about whether it does going to affect the numbers?
Yeah, the numbers and the timing.
Okay, we can. My understanding is it potentially will affect the numbers. It's not going to affect the ability of Metro to impose a tax because they are authorized to do so by statute and charter, but it very well might affect the numbers is my understanding.
Yeah, and by what Elizabeth just said, perhaps the timing as well.
And timing in terms of when the court rules?
Well, if it's employee, if there's pass-through or if it's employee, that could change the timing of when it's actually collected.
You can reach out with Metro, get further clarity, certainly.
Okay?
Yep.
Paul, I have a question for you. You said we could plug $24 million into the budget as a revenue.
Well,
How do you do that?
well, you just, you just use their numbers as the estimate. That's what they're estimating.
But if
I
we
mean,
plug-
if it comes in April of next year or it comes in June, you still need to recognize it. So we need to plug it in there. If we don't get it, we don't get it. But
So, but will it be spent?
no, as I mentioned, plug it in as revenue, not as an expenditure. Because we don't know when we'll get it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Martha?
Yeah, thanks, because I think we're trying to figure out how to manage the uncertainty here, because there's two risks, right, Paul? One is the lawsuit, and you're going to investigate that for us, Mr. Madcore. The other piece of it is, again, it's an income tax, which is largely more volatile. At least that's my understanding, so correct me if I'm wrong, Elizabeth, that's another issue. But I do have a question for staff. First of all, I want to thank staff for all the work you did on the LIP. I know that it was well-received this morning, and the issue here is not the plan, okay? The issue is the timing of the funding. So you spent many hours with that, and I'm sorry, I am going to diss Metro a little bit. Why this came up so suddenly in this glitch is really egregious to me, seriously. We weren't the only county to be surprised by this, and everybody operated on the assumption that we would get those dollars, okay? But, so, that's not our monkey in our circus. Their screw-up is their monkey in their service, and rarely do I
Martha,
diss.
you talking to your mic?
Okay, it's their monkey in their circus with this. It's not staff's fault, and it's not our fault, okay? So, but I do have a question for staff, and I'm going to lead up to this. So when I look at page 3 of the memo, you have the continuation of current programs. Could you review what those are quickly for me? And are you saying in this memo that if you don't have an additional close to 4.5 million, those programs will go away? In other words, we don't have the money to sustain those programs, is that correct?
Some of it, yes, that is correct. The Veterans Village has been funded through the Affordable Housing and Services Fund.
Okay,
We were planning to redistribute that to focus on outside of the urban growth boundary, the rural,
Right.
but we would just have to pull that back in, of course, to fund that Veterans Village. The 150 folks that are currently housed in motels, we do not have a funding source identified to continue that.
okay,
Serenity House and Haven House, those are both homes that the funding source through corrections is ending we worked with corrections to ensure these folks would have a place to stay. These are serious, persistent mental illness folks that are, when they leave prison, they have a place to live, transitional housing. I don't believe he has a funding source to continue those two homes right now. And then the only other one that isn't on here is in the budget presentation this morning when I talked about the Health Share Kaiser Rent Assistance
Right,
Program.
right.
That was 1 year, and I have 120 senior disabled people housed that their rent assistance will end June 30th. So those are that's the bare minimum here on this page 3 that we kind of were thinking about.
So, go ahead, Martha, a quick
yeah,
question.
so what I'm concerned about is there are people who have been dependent on this, and the Veterans Village, as I said, could continue, but we could potentially have other folks. We don't have any money set aside from the Housing Authority to continue these without additional funding, and when the income tax, or whatever we're calling it, income tax passed on businesses and on people above a certain level, 125,000, you were going to continue those with those additional monies. I just want to clarify that.
Yes,
So
that's correct.
essentially what we're looking at then, colleagues, that if we don't have that 4.5 million, we could have some real issues here. So, and I don't think we can depend on Metro, really. I don't know where they're going to get their, I really can't believe I really can't believe they couldn't see this in the crystal ball, quite frankly.
So I just want to say that we've made decisions throughout the year about how to utilize funding, being
Right.
told this money would be here July 1st. So this is really upsetting for me personally. We did just barely receive 40 emergency vouchers the Housing Authority got as a result of just new HUD funding. We can take those 40 and give them to these folks, but there's still going to be 80 people that
Okay.
that are senior disabled that won't have rent assistance as of July because of decisions we've made, because of promises that have been made, so.
So if I can make a suggestion, just a suggestion, and we can bat this around. It seems to me, if we were going to thread the needle on this, not trusting Metro to really follow through on anything at this point, I'm really upset. I never usually get this upset, but I am really, this is on beyond whatever for me. Could we use, Gary, ARPA money for those particular programs, but with the understanding that we're going to have to continue to find other money if we're going to at least keep them going? Assuming Metro, and then if Metro does get us money, we can pay ourselves back, because that was part of our plan. Is that possible?
If you were to support bridge funding, I would recommend using the county's ARPA allocation, because it's one-time only money that we were not expecting. We're grateful to have it. You could use it for this purpose and then repay it from the Metro funds once we do get the Metro funds. That is an
So-
option for you to take, yes.
So the bottom line is, at some point, we could probably say we'd get an estimate of close to 5 million from them at some point, and we'd be able to keep these programs going. I guess my point is, I don't see how we can implement the entire plan that we have yet, but what we can do is try and salvage what you anticipated. And I will say that the other thing with the Veterans Village was thank you for at least trying to take that money and reallocate it to the rural areas, because that was my absolute grief with this all along, that it was really only within the Metro UGB, and we also have these kinds of issues out in our rural areas. So staff did do something really good
Well,
in
yeah, I
terms
like
of
that.
reallocating it. So I think that's a thread the needle, and if we can get it paid back, what do you think?
Well, I think we need to consider that, Martha. I like the idea. I do have a question, is redistribution of these funds, for instance, this Metro money's coming in, are we approved to use it for the Vets Village, for instance? Because that's not new housing, and we're not creating anything new. We are not creating any additional units.
You just can't supplant existing local funds. So if we took current local funds supporting the Vets Village and we continued to use them for housing or housing services or homeless services, that's all they care about. We have local control to determine how, as long as it's the same purpose.
Okay.
Commissioner Fisher, are you up?
Yes. Thank you, Chair Smith. I don't have my little button to push since we're not Zooming. So I appreciate what Commissioner Schrader had mentioned, and with that and with what Commissioner Savas is saying, and I would like to propose, so I guess I will make a motion, but
Well, I would caution, please, until all commissioners have an opportunity to speak.
okay. Well, then, when the chair is ready to entertain a motion, I think we should take a fiscally conservative approach. I think that is very important, to be very prudent, because we are in uncertain times, and that is concerning, of course. We do see the volatility in the state income tax of it. I mean, our fiscal system in this state is so volatile because we so depend on the income tax, and so I'm very sensitive to that. But I do think that what we should do is to direct staff to develop a plan for the county, but also to work to see if we could get Metro to come along board with us with a plan to implement this local implementation plan that our county commissioners approved and the Metro Oversight Committee approved this morning, but not to do anything until we have an intergovernmental agreement that is signed. I think that we need to make it contingent upon that.
Let's discuss that. Martha has one solution, you have another. Commissioner Scholl,
I don't have a comment right now.
you don't have a comment, Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, well, I've got the ARPA guidance, and on page 8, which is on the backside,
Yeah.
it kind of, the way I read it is, and I read it somewhere else too, that we can't use the ARPA dollars for things like loans and the suggestions just made for the bridge funding, because it's not eligible. It's got to be COVID related. All the guidance is there is related to COVID. So I don't think, all due respect, I don't think, we should just get some more answers to the questions we raised today before we decide or make any motions, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't want to, yeah, that's my opinion. Make sure that we can, for example, if the idea is to borrow ARPA dollars, the way I read this, and from what I understand, this guidance is going to get tighter. It's not going to get looser. So, but the way it reads right now, what's the line in here? Unfunded liability, all the things you can't do. So, yeah, not and through the pandemic are not used to fund reductions in net tax revenue, so on and so forth. But I just would reference you look at page 8, the last page of the ARPA guidance that we got dated May 10th.
Oh, can we get a copy of that?
I think
saw
it's in our email.
It's in our email, okay. So what you're saying, Paul, is we can't use it, and
We
maybe
may
Mr.
not, the way I interpret this, we may not be able to use it.
maybe
And
Mr.
I think Paul
Madcore-
is right. Every time new ARPA guides come out, there are more restrictive than they are.
Our
Yes.
staff needs to research that because I'm hearing different answers from our staff. So respect from our staff, we need to be clear on the answer we're given, please. So we need to find that out, Commissioner, and be absolutely accurate on that. But I don't have an answer for you today.
Right. And I understand why it's premature to make a decision today. I think this is for at least directing staff to get the information we need. Let's come back with a better understanding of that. I do have one question for Jill, and that is, Jill, I'm under the understanding that on the hotel, the folks are in hotels right now, paid with COVID CARES Act dollars. Two things. Number one, when is that CARES Act dollars no longer eligible to be used for that purpose? Question number one. And then number two, my understanding is where people are getting transitioned into a better place from there right now. That's what I'm hearing. So what is that transition rate, and will that 150 number come down as a result of that transitioning?
I don't know if Vahid is on Zoom. Those are not programs that are under my oversight, so I don't want to try to answer those. If Vahid is on, he may be able to.
He is on. I'm just bringing him over. Okay, he's on.
Because if the CARES Act can be spent for a longer period of time, we could use those dollars, and that's a legitimate expense.
Yep.
Is Vahid there?
Yeah, Vahid, if you want to go ahead.
Vahid, can you comment on Commissioner Savas's questions and points?
Yes, for the record, this is Vahid Brown with the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. My understanding is that the motel-funded programs with CARES Act dollars, those programs do come up against a time limit, or they will end on June 30th. I don't know the answer to Commissioner Savas's question as to whether the CARES Act dollars that fund those programs are eligible to be spent on those specific programs past that date. Social Services and I think the Emergency Operations Center have worked together on the implementation of those sheltering programs. Apologize, I don't have the specific details. With respect to Commissioner Savas's question about moving on, yes, Commissioner Savas, there has been a pretty Herculean effort to connect people who were placed in motel shelter through that program to permanent housing, either through the Metro 300 housing vouchers that Jill Smith has talked about, or through ESG COVID rapid rehousing programs that are funded through community development. That has been a successful effort, but there are still, my understanding is that there are still at this time between 100 and 150 households in motel shelter. That may have changed in the past week, but the last time I had information related to those programs from Social Services, it was still pretty near full utilization.
Okay, so I'm not contradicting myself, but just take another spin at it. So let's just talk about the ARPA dollars. If the ARPA dollars are COVID-related, my question is the guidance for the CARES Act dollars that much different than the guidance related to COVID as far as rent assistance or getting people in places like the hotels? And is that similar enough to we could actually use it for that particular purpose, for that expense only?
Good question, Paul.
I believe it is, because the CARES Act are also federal dollars. They're all coming from the same source, but we just need to absolutely clarify that's the intent, so we will do that.
Yeah, because if it is, we don't need to worry about substituting dollars. We can actually just literally apply for the actual purpose of the ARPA dollars in the first place.
But does that get to Commissioner Schrader's?
Can we use it for these programs?
Okay, and that's, of course, temporary. It buys us, what, maybe a year?
Probably, and then we would know at least what we'd get from Metro. We'd probably at least get that much, you would think, if we're going to get anything, that at least we wouldn't be losing.
Is there anything else
infrastructure.
on this list that would qualify or not qualify for ARPA dollars based on the information we have at this time? I'd like to look at it from that point of view.
Yeah.
I think that's what staff maybe can study, come back in a couple, whenever they're ready.
I think, because we do not have to pass this budget today, we have until June, and I'm going to really ask respectfully that we have budget committees coming up with our citizens' budget committee people, and they're smart people. But I would really refrain from anybody trying to, maneuver something into a budget, and I would just try to pass the budgets we have and let the board work on this in a very thoughtful and deliberative manner. And I think we should use time. Anybody who has ever invested money can understand the time effect on money. Money has value over time. And we may find by the time July 1st runs around, or June 30th, we're going to be in a different situation where we can make a more informed decision on these situations. Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, Chair Smith, I appreciate that. I do want to emphasize, when Jill presented this morning, she did talk about, and we've talked about this today, that there are people that are currently in shelter that we as a county and a community are depending on these dollars July 1 to transition them into more stable housing. And so that is an absolute immediate need. And so when I had suggested my motion, I think it really fits well for us as a board to, so I will make a motion to direct staff to develop a plan for Clackamas County, but also to have conversations with Metro, because I think they're a partner here, with Metro for bridge funding, whatever source that would be, could be ARPA, might be something else, to implement the local implementation plan that we passed, and to also move forward with the IGA. But we should not move forward with approving any dollars unless we do have an IGA with Metro. And I would love it if someone would second that approach so staff will have direction.
A motion has been made. Do I hear a second? Motion fails because lack of a second, and I think I will tell you why, Commissioner. I think you got too specific when you mentioned the LIP and the IGA. It gave me heartburn because council is already doing our IGA, and they've talked to us about that. We have already instructed our staff to go ahead and do this. I understand your passion so much that we have people in housing whom we need to take care of. We gave them housing thinking that we would have funding for it. And I think that we need to reach out to Metro to see if there's any bridge funding there. Jill, you understand that? Whoever in the room does this thing. We need to figure out if we can use ARPA funding, but I don't think that we need to have all of those 5 or 6 different elements in one motion. That's why I think you didn't get a second. And I'm not sure if we need a motion.
I don't know if we need a motion either.
Yeah, Paul?
Yeah, so I tend to agree with that. I mean, I think that we give staff the time to answer the questions, and that we got here today. They're going to come back, whether that's next Tuesday or whatnot, and find out what we can do so we can come up with give staff some good direction after that. I'm confident we'll get where we need to get. How we get there, just give it a few days to sort all this stuff out. I'd like to hear the legal opinion, what's going on with the court case, and see how that affects timing and the total amount of revenue, and then we get the budget part fixed and get this all done. So just give us some time for staff to come back some clear answers so we can all feel good about what we're doing. Gary, do you have any ideas?
Is that okay, Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I just think we're all on the same page, but I am totally fine with us having staff. I always know that it's good for staff to have clear direction.
Yes, it is.
I think we're all pretty much on the same page. I do think that a message to the community that this board supports the local implementation plan that we passed and that Metro was so enthusiastically supported.
Well, we did
Unanimously this morning
support
is
it.
an important
Yeah.
message
Well,
for us.
Commissioner Fisher, we did support it when we voted for it.
Yep.
I mean, that would be redundant at this point. Gary, do you have instruction? Maybe we should repeat what we were talking about.
I think we got it. So
Okay.
staff will continue our research we've been doing since Thursday over the weekend, and you'll give us a little more time, which we appreciate.
Yes.
We'll come back to you with more specific recommendations of what your options could be and what's legally allowed and what is not. I do ask what Chair Smith has asked, please don't bring this up tomorrow or Wednesday during the Budget Committee meetings, because that will throw everything into a loop, because staff won't be ready yet, and the public members have not been briefed on this. So if we could allow staff time to do their work, we'll come back to you after this week with some recommendations, if that'd be okay, please.
Martha?
Yeah, I just think it's important for us to know that we really are trying to weave our way through this, okay? We're not just saying, we're not going to do it, and we don't have the money. I've worked with Metro for many years, so I'm a little more jaded about promises made and kept, I'll be honest. I hope Christine Lewis, I'm going to mention Christine, I love her to death. I hope she still talks to me after this. But I do think we need to let our advocates know we're going to do everything we can to try and get appropriate housing for people and at least maintain whole what we already have that we've been working on. And that we are going to depend on Metro to follow through on this one somehow. And there you go.
Thank
So-
you. I think we had a lot of good ideas today. Do I hear any more comments from commissioners or staff? Hearing none, today's meeting is adjourned. Thank you.